Hi there, my name's Guy, you're watching Midwinter Minis, and in this video I'm painting up Corsaro Khan of the White Scars for a very good cause. I'm not only going to be painting this model, I'm also going to be auctioning it off for charity, and shaving my facial hair into a moustache, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so here's the model I'm painting for this episode, and after about 2 months of doing really huge complicated projects, I am so relieved just to be painting a single, relatively normal Space Marine model. Corsaro Khan is the third company captain of the White Scars, a very cool chapter of the Adeptus Astartes in the universe of Warhammer 40k. And this little dude costs £28 or $45. Now, even though it's just a single model, this kit is made of 20 different pieces, which I'm going to carefully cut away from the frame and spend some time cleaning away all of the mold lines with the back of my hobby knife, some tiny files, and even using some thin plastic glue to melt them away as well, depending on where they are. For the most part, assembly was pretty simple. It's quite a dynamic pose with lots of little parts, but goodness me, this mold line running all around the power pack and the skull-topped banner is going to be really irritating to deal with. Anyway, as I just said, I've really bogged myself down with some huge projects in the last couple of months, and I'm going to try my absolute best to get this video done in a week. Now, my work week is usually Sunday to Thursday, but I gave myself a little head start with this one because once the kids were back with their mum on the Saturday night, I spent the rest of the evening assembling this little dude. Now, given that Movember is all about promoting men's mental and physical health, I'm just going to bring you along for the ride on my week so you can actually see what goes into doing the things that I do, because I think a lot of people are under the impression that the life of a YouTuber is probably way more glamorous than it actually is, and honestly that's not healthy for anyone. Now, this model comes with some weird little plastic grass tufts, but I'm not 100% convinced by the sculpts. They kind of just look the same as the fur that's on his pelt, so I think I'll leave them off for now and just replace them with tufts later on. I jumped on a call with Heresy for Heretics about a fun little collab we're doing, and after that it was time for bed, but not before posting a little sneak peek of this week's project on Instagram. Sunday morning, about 7 AM, I took my coffee upstairs and just carried on. On days that I don't have any crucial things to do, like not meeting people, no taking care of kids, or days that Hattie's working too, I usually work in the morning until about 11 AM and then do another half day in the evening, and that way I don't spend the whole day inside never seeing the sun. Once the tactical rock was placed nicely so the model will be pretty central on the base, I gave the base a little superglued sand and texture paste. I then attached everything to some little sticks and plastic cups ready for priming. Now for the colours, as this model is going to be a white scar, I think it would be silly to do anything dark, but I also don't want to just blast it with white. I'd like to build up to it. So to give the right grim dark tone, I think I'll use my pal Pete the Wargamer's custom colour from the Colourforge Dead Animal Bits. It's a kind of warm off-whitey beige? I don't know, it's great and I think it'll be perfect for this. Now, to simultaneously reveal all of the details and also darken down the recesses, I'm going to dilute some of this Basilicanum Grey contrast paint with loads of airbrush flow improver and thinner to make it really runny and want to hug the recesses. And then I'm just going to slop it all over every bit of the model. And by the way, this is how I record my videos. Not many people do it this way because you have to hobby a bit further away from your face than a lot of people are comfortable with, but I think it gives a really good point of view for what you're actually doing, and I've been doing this for 6 years now, 7 years, and I'm super used to it. Anyway, while I leave that to dry, time to have some dinner. Okay, now everything's dry and things are looking pretty good. Let's start building up a patina on the white armor with some not white. I'm going to use this Frosted Edge paint from TT Combat as the white. It has a slightly blue tinge to it, but I think that'll work well with the warmer tones we've got underneath. I thinned that light paint with some water, dabbed some ripped up sponge into it, and then just started stabbing the sponge all over the surface of the armor to start building up a patina. Because of the shape of the sponge, it shouldn't be able to squash down into any of the really deep recesses, just focusing on the most prominent bits, so you're essentially also building up a kind of crude volume highlight at the same time. And once I'd been around all of the parts once, the first part was dry again, so I could add another layer. Now, by the way, this white scar is going to be the final Space Marine in the Movember Marines fundraiser. The final colour, the Space Marines rainbow being white. I was asked to take part by my awesome friend, Dr. Simon Clark, author, climate scientist, and fellow disgusting Warhammer nerd, who's been really championing the Movember Marines project that Dr. Hannah Wakeford, aka Stellar Planet on Instagram, started as a fun way of raising money for men's mental and physical health. Just in case you were wondering, I've linked their accounts down in the video description. Now, for the final layer of this white sponging, I mixed in a tiny bit of AK white to the frosted edge, and also made this crude little sponge holder out of an old paintbrush protector, and a really tiny bit of sponge just jammed in there, and that way I can be a bit more accurate with the placement of this slightly brighter white. And I don't get any white all over my fingers, which is nice. Okay, time to let that dry and go and enjoy my day while the sun's up. A nice long dog walk, some tasty lunch, cleaning the chaos from the day before, laundry, organising the kids' toys and clothes, and taking some stuff they'd grown out of to a charity shop. In the evening, I base coated the Under Armour parts of the other dark elements with this Ospedale Grey, which also has quite a subtly blue hue to it. And while I have a bit of a deadline, I'm not taking all the time in the world for this. I'm trying to be a bit careful here, not rushing through as if it was a speed paint video, because I want this model to look great. I'm going to be auctioning it for a great cause after all. After the wash stage, it's revealed some ugly gaps in the model, specifically on the back of Corsaro's big birdie pal. So instead of faffing around and making up the tiniest bit of milliput ever, I just used some of this AK modelling putty, and it basically has the texture of thick paint and is water soluble. So you just paint it into the gaps with a normal brush. Moisten the brush and smooth it out so you're not obscuring any existing details, and yeah, it's done. And in the spirit of Movember, I thought I'd also see if it's possible to use this gloop to sculpt his simple moustache onto the severed head he's carrying. I mean, yeah. Yes is definitely the answer. This is fantastic for making organic shapes on the fly, and it dries really firm in about 20-30 minutes. For the last chunk of time on my Sunday, I had a chat with an awesome artist called Era of Failure about a fun little collaboration that we're planning. No spoilers, but you'll see it when you see it. And after that, I had the energy for a few rounds of WWE 2K24 and then bed. Okay, Monday. Now the messy parts have been taken care of, let's lay down some base coats and start bringing this dude to life. Now, I'm going to deviate from my standard style of painting tutorial voiceover here. I'm going to show you the paints I'm going to use and the stuff I paint with it. But while I do that, let me quickly chat about what this video is really about, and that's Movember, the movement that uses the month of November to raise awareness of men's physical and mental health issues, and raise some money to help those causes too. While obviously everyone has their own struggles, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Men are really suffering at the moment, and often suffering in silence. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go all manosphere on you. Advocating for men's health and happiness doesn't need to be at the expense of anyone else's, but let me share some eye-opening facts with you. In most Western countries, men are twice as likely to become homeless. Men are only half as likely to seek out medical attention when they need it, leading to delayed diagnoses and ultimately worse outcomes. Men are also 4 times more likely to become alcoholics. And obviously, the biggie, men are 3 times more likely to end their own lives. Now, these aren't just things that happen because men are men. There are massive, historic, genetic, and societal issues at play here. And I know that painting a toy in a YouTube video isn't going to change any of that, but maybe, just maybe, it might raise a little bit of awareness. From my own side, while I am incredibly thankful that I'm doing pretty well mentally, that certainly does not run in my family. While my granddad definitely wasn't diagnosed, I'm fairly sure he had a few quite severe depressive spells in his life. My dad was an alcoholic for most of his adult life, and he was in a really, really bad way when he died. My cousin also really suffered with mental health issues and alcoholism, and after a really tragic downward spiral, he died at 34. Some of my closest friends have also endured really deep depressive spells that almost took them too. And as I said, there's obviously something wrong here, and Movember is a charitable movement that is trying to turn things around. Through generous donations from amazing people and cool fundraisers, just like this video, they funded over 1,000 men's health projects over the last 20 years, which are helping transform the way mental and physical health services support men. So a very good cause, and hopefully, as I've shown, something very close to my heart. So yeah, that's why I'm painting this friendly little toy of a bioengineered space monk killing machine. So now the base coats are laid down and some simple dry brushing was applied to bring out the textures. That's all the difficult to reach places painted up. So now I think I can assemble the Mini without it being too much of a pain to paint behind all the tricky parts. Those are the bits that won't need to be highlighted anyway. And once that was done, that's the end of my Monday workday. So going pretty well so far, I think. Okay, Tuesday. Now, today is one of the days Hattie is in the studio, packing orders for our merch store and color grading all of the footage from this project I've taken so far, all while I was trying something for the first time, an oil wash. Now, this isn't my first time using oil paints. I've had these oil paints for about 20 years. It was my medium of choice for canvas painting, but this is the first time I've used them on a miniature. I added a tiny blob of lamp black and burnt sienna onto a bit of scrap card, and then squirted a bit of white spirit into a plastic cup ready to mix it up. You could use odorless spirits if the white spirit smell bothers you, but if I'm being honest, I kinda love it. It gives me a big nostalgia hit of being in my A-level art room again. So bit by bit, I added some of the black and some of the brown paint into the spirit, swirled it around until it had fully dissolved, and then tested it out on my palette to see if it was dark enough. Not quite, let's add a little bit more of each. Yeah, perfect, looking good. Now it's just a case of painting this all over the model. The surface tension of an oil wash like this is practically zero. It just wants to find every crease and crevice, and has a really grimy look to it that'll really add to the grimdark Warhammer vibe. This is looking pretty cool, but it's not where I'm going to leave it. But what I'll need to do is leave it for about an hour or so for the solvent to evaporate and leave the oil paint on the model ready for the next step. So lunchtime and dog walk. Oh hey, here I am on my daily hide in the woods because man, I just love my privacy, hence the scarf. And no, it's not because I've already done the charity shave and need to preserve the continuity of the video. Don't be so suspicious, it's cold, okay? Now, if you've watched any of my videos over the last year, you'll know that I am a big fan of Incogni, and they have done an amazing job of protecting my privacy. If you weren't already aware, you are for sale. A digital profile of your interests, your purchase history, your political leanings, and even really sensitive stuff like your mailing and email addresses. And this info is bought and sold by entities called data brokers, and there are hundreds and hundreds of them, all selling your data to the highest bidder. And you have absolutely no control over who that highest bidder is. Good news though, because Incogni is here to proverbially save the day, sending out takedown and deletion requests on your behalf so you don't have to do it manually. No, you're being such a good girl. No, don't you dare. They even tell you how much time they saved you on their website, which for me was over 100 hours, which is like 3 weeks of full-time work. I think that's money well spent, to be honest. And even more so when I tell you that if you enter the code Midwinter Minis at their checkout, you get 60% off an annual Incogni plan. I've been using them for about a year now, and in that time, I've honestly noticed way fewer cold calls coming my way. And I get almost no targeted junk mail through my letterbox anymore, which is fantastic. So yeah, what else is there to say? If that sounds like something you might want to try out, head to the link in the video description and try it out for yourself. 60% off with the code Midwinter Minis, and let's get back to the painting, shall we? Now the oil paint has all settled, it's time to whip out more spirits and some cotton buds. These are just cheapy ones from Flying Tiger, I think. Dip the tip into the spirit, dab off the excess on some paper, and then gently wipe away the oil wash from the surface of the model. Don't rub too hard because you might pull off some of the thin layers of paint while you're at it, but the oil wash should stay behind in the creases and recesses and any hard to reach spots. Maybe the cheap cotton buds rough up too easily? Let's try some proper Johnson & Johnson ones. Oh, nope, they're somehow even worse than the cheap ones. Anyway, after a few minutes of gentle wiping, yeah, it's looking great. Just a few emails to respond to and admin bits to clear up, and then I'm going to let the oil paint settle overnight before I paint on top of it. I had just enough energy for dinner, a nice long dog walk in the dark, and a little bit of blasphemous before hitting the hay. Okay, Wednesday, let's get this model finished. Now, I could just leave it there, but I think with a few more highlights and extra details, this thing's really going to pop. I got out the frosted edge paint again, thinned it quite heavily, and with hardly any paint on my brush, I just lightly stippled on some highlights onto the top-facing areas of the white armor. I do the same thing with the skulls, but just using very thin ice yellow. And then ice yellow mixed with sunny skin tone for Corsaro's face highlights. I then mixed ice yellow into the Flesh Tearer's red contrast paint to make a very transparent highlight layer, and did some little sketchy crisscrosses all over the fabric to give it some subtle texture. Same thing for the inside of the cape too, going back to the original base coat colour to calm down the overly dark creases, and adding ice yellow to build up scratchy highlights. Some light grey highlights on the hair too, especially on the severed head. I want him to look like he's a silver fox anyway, and really highlight the added facial hair. A few very thin ice yellow mixed with snakebite leather highlights on the bird's coolest looking feathers, and then I reapplied the folded steel paint to the sword because I want it to stand out a bit more from the dark metal elsewhere. Again, I used some very thin sandy coloured paint to calm down the really dark creases on the purity seals, and then used some of that thinned basilicanum grey that I used just after priming all the models to do some tiny scroll writing on the purity seal paper too. I then used that same basilicanum grey contrast paint thinned even more to start glazing each face of the blade, drawing the paint down to the bottom on the left side and to the top on the right side, making sure not to leave any blobs of paint left behind after each sweep, letting them dry, adding more layers, but starting further up each time, creating the illusion of a blend. I then whipped out my favourite army painter colour, Caribbean Ocean, and used this to mark out areas I want a cool electricity effect on the power sword. And then I mixed in some white paint to the Caribbean Ocean to create a lighter blue colour to more precisely paint into the middle of the electricity effects. I mean, we're almost done, I think. Time to get this dude on a base. Let's just yank the paperclip out of his foot. Oh no. Okay, let's just glue his leg back on and get him stuck down. And now, tufts. Some nice warm tone tufts from Gamer's Grass should do the trick on the base instead of the weird thick furry bits on the actual model. A bit of super glue, smush them down, and then give them a snip to make them look a bit more rough and realistic. And now, to make sure I follow the rules for the Movember Marines challenge, I'm going to paint the rim of the base the same colour as the armour. So yet another opportunity to whip out the beautifully named Frosted Edge. A few thin coats of this matte varnish, and we are good to go. I've never painted a white scar before, but I think this one turned out pretty good. I'm not a fan of painting bright white models, but this heavily weathered, realistic, grungy look really suits them, I think. Now, as I said, I'm not pretending that I'm in love with white scars and that I'm gonna start a whole army. I'm not. But if you like white scars, maybe you collect them, or maybe you just like cool models, enjoy this channel and want to help support an awesome charity, this model is on eBay right now, and 100% of everything I receive after eBay fees will be donated to the Movember Marines fundraiser. Go check out the link in the description if you want it. Also, Hattie's entry for the Movember Marines project is on there too. Same deal, so 2 fun models up for grabs for an awesome cause. Not only that, while I'm at it, I'm also going to personally match every single donation that the Movember Marines fundraiser has generated so far, so an extra £567. Done. Well, now that's it painted. It's time to shave. Goodbye. Oh no. Oh, weird. I haven't touched my chin for like 13 years. Oh god. I mean, it's not so much like Magnum PI as Magnum Pork Pie, but I'll take it. It's fine. It looks fine. It looks fine. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please go check out the other awesome Movember Marines that have been painted up for this project. All the links to everything are in the description, including donation links if you've maybe been moved by this video enough to help out with a great cause. And also, don't forget you can get 60% off an annual Incogni plan by following the link in the description and entering the code MidwinterMinis at checkout. My name's Guy, you've been watching Midwinter Minis, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now. What do you think of Daddy's beard?
It's great.
It's great, but it's gone.
I love it.
You love it, do you? You just like the moustache on its own, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, what about you?
I do.
You like it as well? Yeah? Why are you shining a torch at me? Ah!